Vice Chair is also in that same committee right now, presenting after me. So we have a quorum. We will get started with the Senate Judiciary Committee. As always, if you want to be heard on a bill, please come sign up on one of the sign-up sheets. I will ask Senator Hatchett, would you like to open us up in a word of prayer? What's your mic number? 13.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all together here today. Thank you for the beautiful weather we have. Please be with us and give us wisdom as we make decisions for the people of Georgia. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. We will start with House Bill 218. Representative Hilton. We have the version that passed the House, LC 481228S. And let us gear up those sheets and we'll let you get started. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 218. This is LC 481228S. House Bill 218 passed unanimously through House Judiciary Committee, passed with a vote 164-1, and the House is supported by Prosecuting Attorneys Council, was brought to us through them and agreed to by Gactel. It went through some pretty significant work. It actually passed through House Judy last year, just didn't get caught up on a crossover for a vote. Got through this year and deals with a hearsay exception for those who are mentally incapacitated over the age of 17. And with that, we'll pause to answer any questions. I've learned before I go to any Judy that I bring my attorney here.
It's important.
As I am a banker and not one.
You want the privilege to attach.
I'm married to an attorney, so I lose every argument we have. Yep.
Mr. Johnson, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm just happy to answer questions from the committee.
All right. Questions from the committee for the author or Mr. Johnson? Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I know this, but just tell us how this changes what the status is now of the law as it applies to these type of statements, hearsay statements or otherwise. And I think I understand what it goes to, but tell us what the difference is.
Yes. Am I live?
You are.
Okay. So currently for children who are physically or sexually abused, we have this exception that allows a forensic interview or an outcry witness to testify. We do not have that with mentally incapacitated adults. So if we were to get a forensic interview to go through and kind of carefully work through whatever incapacities or cognitive or communication issues they may have, we cannot currently bring that forensic interview to trial. I'll give you one big example. There was a 99-year-old who was raped in a facility, or at least that is the allegation, was rape. And she made a full outcry, was interviewed, and a few days later became, due to sepsis, unable to cognitively function anymore. But at the time of the outcry, she was cognitively okay. This would allow a fighting chance with the outcry witness to testify and be questioned by cross-examination, so that from someone who no longer is able to tell the story they once told, we have some sort of a chance to get that information in.
I'll give the committee just another brief example. This took place in Cobb County. Two individuals with Down syndrome on a bus. One of the individuals was beaten by the bus driver. The other individual with Down syndrome witnessed it, testified to it at the time. They were later forensically interviewed. They couldn't, they were terrified to go to trial and testify there, but the forensic interview was not allowed in as evidence. So this would provide that exception for that case.
Senator Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not just limiting it to a forensic interview or someone that conducts a forensic interview. The way I'm reading it, this is anyone with whom a statement is made to, correct?
Correct.
Is that how the code reads for children as well, or does it have to be a forensic interview?
It reads the same for the child hearsay exception. We patterned it on that exactly.
Okay.
Exact same verbiage, in fact.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? What's the pleasure of the committee? Motion do pass from Senator Watson. Do we have a second? Second for Senator Jones. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. And who is carrying the bill in the Senate?
Senator Albers
Albers.
is our Senate sponsor, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. Yep.
We do have one judge joining us today, John Morse, the president of the council, is from Savannah. Judge Morse, are you here? Thank you for joining us today. Any words of wisdom for us? Not at the moment. That's a good answer. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your work with the council. We always appreciate that. All right, next bill on the agenda, House Bill 996. Representative Vance, if you want to come up. With this bill, we are working off of the substitute that I will, no, Senator Rhett just stepped out. We'll have him address in a moment. We are working off of LC 394355S. Representative Vance, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fellow senators, not fellow, but y'all.
You might be here one day. You never know who's your
I
senator.
don't know. Rick Williams, I think, is going to be here a long time.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
The funeral home folks would fight you if you tried to replace him, probably.
I bring you House Bill 996, which has actually been married to a Senate bill that was Senate Bill 320, sponsored by Senator Ritt, Senator Doc Ritt. And what this bill does, as it's currently comprised, is two things. Number one, it allows, or it actually requires testing, HIV testing for within 48 hours of those people who are jailed. I'm sorry, sir. It's all kind of new to me.
Now, you can just address your part of the bill because the committee already heard the other part, and we can let Senator Redd address that. If you want to stick with your part, that'll make your life a little easier.
That makes mine a
I know
lot
it's
easier.
like to go to a committee and the bill is only half what you had before. So,
Well, thank you. All right. The second part of this bill is has to do with jailers, and what it does is it authorizes post-certified jailers the legal ability to effectuate the arrest of someone who comes to the jail to surrender him or herself into custody for a warrant or a complaint, and it initiates, a jailer could initiate the arrest of a person violating a criminal law within the jail or perimeter guard lines of a jail. There are approximately 140 to 145 county jails out here today that when someone comes in to surrender, they have to call a deputy in off the road in order to effectuate that arrest. This will give those post-certified jailers within the guard lines of the jail, only there, the ability to effectuate that arrest, get that process started, and of course those crimes that occur within the jail, they could be, rather than calling someone in off the road, they could get that process started and move it forward toward the investigation division and on up the road. So that's what my part of the bill from the House does, and it passed 166-0 in the House.
all right. Thank you, Representative Vance. Before we move on to the rest of the bill, anybody have any questions in the committee for the author of the House bill? All right. Senator Rhett, the rest of the bill, you tell the committee briefly, remind us what the rest of the bill is, something we already passed out of this committee previously.
Introduce yourself.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Strickland and the rest of the committee. I'm Jamila Farrell. I am the Director of Program and Planning and Development with the Georgia Commission on Family Violence. So the next part of the bill deals with the HIV testing. So anyone who is a current or future grantee of an OVW ICJR grant, they're under these special conditions that the state must comply with. So Georgia law doesn't at this time. So what we're asking is that the required time for HIV testing, if a victim requests an HIV test from an accused person in a sexually involved crime, that is 48 hours from either consent or indictment. Also, the requirement is that the results of the test be given, whether negative or positive, to the victim or a legal guardian. And then a provision must be added to the law that allows medically appropriate follow-up testing. So those are the three requirements that we're seeking in this law, in this bill.
All right. Any questions concerning the additional part of the bill? And just for the committee's reminder, a year ago we passed out, Senator Rep, what was your bill number again? Do you remember? 320. Senate Bill 320, and then it came up again this year, and we a couple weeks ago we passed out of committee again, and that's been inserted into House Bill 996. All right, no questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay,
we have
thank you.
one individual that wants to be heard on the bill, James Woodall, Southern Center for Human Rights. Welcome back. Feel like you were just here. Don't you feel that way too?
I feel like that every day, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
that's right.
It's always a pleasure to be before this committee. James Woodall from the Southern Center for Human Rights. We come, one, I want to acknowledge that we've spoken with the sheriffs and Representative Vance. We thank you for your work on this bill. We do have some concerns that are not necessarily outlined in the bill itself, but more so just questions about implementation. One is the requirement for peace officers versus law enforcement officers. I know we had conversation about the definition there about what is actually exclusively derived in that power of arrest. When we think about the ability for a jailer to arrest an individual, there was a bill that we heard in this committee that we had a very robust discussion about in terms of immunity and the use of force in effectuating an arrest. We do still have that concern here because in the code as it currently is written, they are not given immunity in terms of using force. Now, we're not here advocating that they should be using deadly force in effectuating of an arrest, but in terms of considering whether or not they would be liable as officers of a municipality or a peace officer rather of that local government, would they be immune or would they have liability as individuals? The other thing we would mention is that we're just equally as concerned about the and I'll read this specifically, really just an unmanageable expansion of local government. And so the local control preemption part that we want to emphasize, that local police departments also play a role in this. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, we would ask that be considered. We're not taking a position one way or the other in terms of the underlying bill because we understand the need, but we also want to just ensure that this committee considers the intended or unintended consequences of it as well.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Woodall? All right. Thank you. Anything further, Representative Vance?
Sir. People from the Sheriff's Association are here. They didn't get here in time to sign up on your sheets. Will y'all allow
Yes.
one of them to speak?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. How are
Good
y'all?
morning.
Good. So my name's Captain Thomas. I'm with the Sheriff's Office in Paulding County, Georgia, where I began my career 20 years ago. This bill alone is very important to jails across the state. And just to give you a few examples, and definitely open for all the questions that y'all may have, is that a jail officer, what this bill will do, and I can speak for my county right now, is we've had 20 incidents inside our jail this year alone where inmates have committed some sort of crime inside the facility, whether that be damage to government property, whether it be assault on another inmate or assault on staff. And currently we have 3 mandated folks inside the jail that are supervisors that are on shift today. So we'd have to pull that mandated officer out of their current position, bring them inside the jail to execute that warrant or take out a warrant for somebody inside the jail. Some counties, they don't have mandated officers inside their jail, so they're pulling mandated officers off the road, bringing them to the jail in order to take that report to have that warrant. So it's going to be huge for jails across the state. Again, for our instance, we had 20 instances inside our jail where we needed that to take place for us. The second part of this bill, when it comes to testing, is a few concerns I would have is who's going to perform this test. We're bringing somebody inside the jail, and then we're told, hey, we need to test them. Who's going to perform that test? What are we going to do if they refuse the test? Who's going to be responsible for that, you know? And the next thing, who's going to be paying for this test? So a few questions we would have, and like they mentioned a minute ago, if they refuse it, it turns into a use of force, which what we don't want, you know? And if so, who's going to back the jail staff for that incident? So that's a few things I'd like to bring before the committee.
All right, any questions for Captain Thomas at this time? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, no one else has signed up to speak on the bill. What's the pleasure of the committee? We have a motion to pass by committee substitute, LC 394355S. Is there a second? There's a second from Senator Watson. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Senator Rett, it is unanimous. And is Senator Rett going to carry your bill in the Senate since he's taking a ride on it? Okay. All right.
He doesn't know that yet.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
well, I figured. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you. All right, next bill on the agenda is House Bill 1123. Representative Barrett. We are also working off as passed the House version, LC 481234S. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson joining you as well.
Yes, sir. Will Johnson, prosecutorial,
Prosecuting
prosecutor,
Attorney's Counsel.
Attorney's
I was
Counsel.
summoned.
Got a subpoena.
Not quite that
Not
bad.
quite.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. House Bill 1123 is another important step in Georgia's fight against elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. In 2018, House Bill 635 was passed, authorizing each of the 49 judicial circuits in Georgia to create an adult abuse, neglect, and exploitation multidisciplinary team, or MDT. The bill was passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. This bill today makes three important improvements to that legislation. First, it creates a statewide regional coordinator program within the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. These regional coordinators will work with the MDTs around the state. Second, it sets the expectation that each judicial circuit will have an elder multidisciplinary team that gives broad latitude to each circuit to tailor this to its own specific needs and is not required unless a regional coordinator program has been funded under the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. Finally, it proposes the creation of an elder abuse justice coalition comprised of a broad array of stakeholders, as outlined in the bill. This bill is supported by the Georgia Council on Aging, the Coalition of Advocates for Georgia's Elderly, also known as COAGE, the Alzheimer's Association, the Georgia Gerontology Society, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, and many others. This bill was passed unanimously by subcommittee, by committee, and was passed in the House by a vote of 165 to 0. I would appreciate your favorable consideration. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, you mentioned that there's multiple groups that work in the area of aging in the policy area in our state that advocate in that area that I know have reached out to me. I see Nancy sitting there as well. And I know they're here today supporting the bill, and they want me to mention that too. They're here if anybody wants to hear from them, from the committee. Any questions from the committee? All right, what's the pleasure of the committee? Motion to pass from Senator Hatchett, a second from Senator Hodges. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. And who's going to be carrying this bill in the Senate?
That's a great question, Mr. Chairman. I welcome your suggestions.
Anybody in the committee feel inspired? Dr. Watson, you look inspired on the end. Oh, he shakes his head. Oh, you're supposed to pretend you're inspired. Senator Kennedy, all right.
Thank you, Senator
Why not?
Kennedy.
Thank you. Well, there's actually, if you want the next bill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you.
You know, for just a second here, I can say I have a little more authority than the pro tem, just for a second. But as soon as the committee ends, that goes away. All right, next on the agenda is House Bill 1165. Does Representative Maynard here? Okay, there you are. Come on up. And we are working off a substitute. There was one change just in the effectiveness of the bill, effective date of the bill. It's Section 2, working off of LC 481275S. Mr. Neal is joining you as well. All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill that you have before you, it simply allows the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to have access to $7.4 million. The need for the bill is because the Governor's Office of Family and Children no longer exists, and so now we are changing the members of the committee so they can access the bill, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for the author? All right, what's the pleasure of the committee? Motion to pass from Dr. Watson. Is there a second? Second from Senator Jones. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. And who's going to be carrying this bill in the Senate?
Chairman Albers.
Chairman Albers. All right. We should have thought of that last time, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's right. Is Chairman Leverett here? He was coming for another committee. Or Chairman Martin. I don't think Chairman Martin's here yet either.
We're texting Leverett.
All right, Leverett's supposed to be close. Hey, somebody wanted to have an early Thursday night, and we're getting close to that. Yeah. Sure. The floor is yours. Let's see. What mic are you? You know what it does? It's not very complicated. You can just read it into the record. He's supposed to be close. Let's give him 1 second. We'll be at ease for just a minute. Yeah. Are you sponsoring? Yeah. No, let's do this for Chairman Martin is close by?
He's chairing House Higher Ed, which is hearing sports betting right now. They're supposed to be done at 12. We have 2 attorneys.
Right. So 1251, let's go back on the record.
You also have a very knowledgeable witness who seems enthusiastic. Oh, yeah.
Judge Morse, would you like to come up? I like how you, when we said that, you turned around and looked behind you to see who it was. And that was genuine. That was pretty good. Isn't House Bill 1251 simply administratively making certain that you aren't going through the state auditor when looking at expenses, instead going through the Council of Superior Court judges?
That is correct, Senator, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you have a question for Senator Calzert.
So what's the problem with the state auditor having a little independent review of these expenses? You're not letting the fox guard the hen house if you let Superior Court Judges Council approve their own expenses.
Is that why you look behind me to see if you had...
That is a very good analogy, Senator Calzert. Actually, we don't have a problem with the present status quo. This is a bill which is being requested by the state auditor. So we would prefer that there would be no fox in the hen house, but they
seem like it would give you a little more credibility if you're like, hey, my expenses are approved by the state auditor. I'm not abusing my position here.
We would love that, but they want to do otherwise.
Okay. Thank you.
Apparently, they came to us and said that this is the only agency they do that for. And because they're responsible for auditing our agency, they didn't think it was appropriate that they be reviewing the travel expenses because they're responsible for auditing the agency.
It's just tricky because the judiciary is such an independent branch, but if you want some accountability
who else do we go to?
Well,
I
as
mean,
Judge Morris said, we did not initiate this, the state
Right.
auditor did.
Okay.
Anybody here from the state auditor's office? Do you want to come up? Let's
Here,
let her
I'll
come
move
up.
and let her sit down.
I'm still in the hot seat. Thank you.
You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Carol Schwinney. I'm with the Department of Audits and Accounts. And we did bring this up to several members of the legislature. We've been long concerned that we are doing an administrative function that as auditors we should not be doing. Our standards require us to be independent in the work that we do. And the function, we are not auditing their travel, they're submitting it to us for initial approval and review. And that is a management function and not an audit function. So we would still, as part of our normal audit procedures, have an opportunity to go in and do audit work after the fact, but that's reviewing all of their, financial activities, and that would just be part of a normal audit function that we would do at any state agency. When it was first assigned to the Department of Audits, which was in 1945, there was not a Council of Superior Court Judges or an administrative office of the courts to assign this responsibility to. And before it became our department's responsibility, it was actually the responsibility of the governor's office. So, since then, these councils have been created and they have staff to perform audit work. Part of their mandate is to handle the financial responsibilities of the superior courts. So we feel like initial approval and review and approval of travel is part of financial responsibilities of that council. So we are seeking to have this responsibility, just like all the other responsibilities for administrative functions have been transferred to them. We think that this is an appropriate transfer as well.
Chairman Leverett, it was on life support. It may be breathing on its own at the moment. I don't know, but we'll see. Other questions from the committee? You want to come up, Chairman Leverett?
I would love to. You can have my seat, sir.
Yeah. Do you want to go and ask your question, Senator Hodges?
Thanks for bringing the bill. My question is to the auditor. What would it do to the quality of your audit if you did find some discrepancies in travel expenses when you were auditing your own work?
That is an issue.
That is the issue.
That is it.
Yeah,
we,
right.
We need to be, our focus is to be
agree.
independent of the work that we are auditing, and that is critical to us to maintain our standards.
Chairman Leverett, Senator Kennedy? Or is it Senator Kennedy?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in trying to find the right landing spot, if not the Council of Superior Court Judges, from your perspective, ma'am, is there another agency or landing place for this review process that would be separate? I think what I'm hearing you say is it's the review management aspect. Your department wants to be involved in just the audits, and it's correct. Conflating the two. Would you have a recommendation different than what this proposal is that you'd care to make?
So, we did have conversations about this. I don't want to necessarily, be changing the bill and assigning tasks to other agencies that probably don't want the work either. But, we did have conversations with the Administrative Office of the Courts, because they are an oversight, kind of have some oversee activities of all courts. Honestly, every agency handles this responsibility themselves, and then we go in and do the audit work. So usually the organizations that's most closest to that activity is the one that's going to do the initial review.
Okay, thank you.
That was me. My question is, are there all the other agencies and even other courts, do they process these things internally, or is there some other group that does this for them as far as we know?
I think for the most part, it's done by,
guess-
by their own counsels. I believe
Right.
that the Administrative Office of the Courts might be providing some support in some areas of travel approval, but it's not being assigned to other state agencies to do that work.
Because to me, I don't know how another agency can know what to review and what to approve and what to process.
We
So-
struggle a lot with, there's a lot of duplication of effort as part of this process too, because we don't have records of who the judges are. And so, when there's a new judge that comes in, then we're having to gather that information. And then we keep separate records. The the Council of Superior Court Judges is having to keep certain records too. So there's a lot of duplication of effort that's attached to the requirement for us to be doing it when we're not the agency that has any information about these judges.
Right. Dr. Watson.
I mean, I think you could say the same thing for us, right? I mean, when we do travel to go to NCSL or other places, and we submit those to our bodies and approved or not. I think this is very good and at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
You want to add anything, Chairman Leverett?
Again, I apologize since I was late to my own hearing. I don't know exactly.
You were passing our bills. That's okay. Yeah.
But the Council of Superior Court Judges currently does stroke the check. My understanding, you don't
That's
actually write the check. You just approve the request, and then the Council of Superior Court Judges cuts the check. So we felt like it would make the most sense for them to also do the process of reviewing. And then, of course, the auditor will now be able to check someone else's work as part of the audit process to make sure it was done properly. So, and they've agreed to take on the process of approving as well. So that was why we felt it made most sense to make the council the appropriate place to rest this duty.
All right. Anything else in the committee? Senator Cowsert?
Is it on? I was just going to make comments, but
Go ahead.
I think it's a bad idea. I mean, when I read about the things with Clarence Thomas spending, receiving trips and spending money, and it undermines the confidence in the judiciary if they are questioned. And I think that Council of Superior Court Judges is their advocacy group. It's looking after them, and they don't want to be doing this. The judges themselves are not asking for this. You're trying to lighten your workload. You've been doing this for 75 years. If it was somehow unethical or unclear, your duties as the auditor, all you're doing is approving the expenses. That ought to have been part of your audit anyway. So you're doing the work in advance. These are reasonable, necessary expenses in relation to their job. You're just shifting that duty to somebody else that you guys have had for, as you said, 1945. I'm not criticizing you, but I think we are safest, and the judiciary will feel better, more honorable if somebody outside of them is approving these expenses over and above their salaries. I would just add, I understand that perspective. Just from a practical standpoint, it creates a lot of additional work that I think could be avoided by what they've proposed, and the council is willing to take it on, and they will be audited. They're going to have someone looking over their shoulder. But I'm aware that my entreaties may be as seed which falls upon rocky ground and can find no purchase.
Well, let's see. What's the pleasure of the committee? Motion to pass from Senator Hodges. There a second? Second from Senator Rhett. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 opposed. 1 motion carries. Who's carrying the bill? Is it Senator Cowsert?
Well, until recently.
This is the fun part of the job.
I'm trying to remember.
Senator Hickman.
That's right. Billy Hickman's in.
Senator Hickman. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, members of the committee. Sorry to keep you waiting.
That's all right. Appreciate your support in moving our bills as well, Chairman Leverett.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, Chairman Martin is on his way, but in the meantime, he tells me there's 2 attorneys here who know a lot more about this than he does. Jonathan Feldman and Alla. Rakin. And just for everyone's sake, in your folders, we printed House Bill 598. It ought to be House Resolution 598. And so this is a bill that has constitutional amendment HR 598. We have that on the way. And also, we're going to be considering, we'll consider the resolution first. Second, the enabling legislation, House Bill 1267. All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Alla Rakin, and I am an attorney at Evershed Sutherland here in Atlanta. And the legislation before you is to move the existing Georgia Tax Tribunal, which is currently part of the executive branch, into the judiciary branch. So there are two pieces of legislation. One, as the chairman mentioned, is HR 598, which is the constitutional referendum that would go on the ballot in November if passed, and the enabling legislation, HB 1267. And the purpose of the legislation is primarily for efficiency, to make the appeal process for taxpayers more efficient, also for the state. The current process, because the tax tribunal is an administrative court, any appeal from the tax tribunal goes through the Fulton County Superior Court, which is a significant backlog in the process. Once the Fulton Court does decide a case, then it is appealed by application to the Georgia Court of Appeals. So you are not a taxpayer is not guaranteed an appeal to the Court of Appeals, though in general the Court of Appeals has been taking the cases. It also promotes efficient independence by keeping the tax tribunal, or now it would be the tax court, in a different branch of the government, the judiciary branch, from the Department of Revenue. Right now they're both as part of the executive branch. And finally, it will clarify the jurisdiction of the tax tribunal and allow the tax court to hear constitutional issues. So right now, the tax tribunal cannot decide any issue of whether a tax imposition is constitutional.
Do you want to add anything, Mr. Feldman?
She said it all.
Okay. And for the committee's sake, you now have the House resolution working off of LC 481215S, and that is the version that passed the House. We'll take up that first, and we'll get to the substitute on the House bill. Questions from the committee? Senator Watson.
Just help me understand this. So instead of going to Fulton County, because that's where the court resides, it would go to the Court of Appeals.
An appeal,
An appeal
of
would,
the decision, right.
An appeal would go to the Court of Appeals rather than going to Fulton County, which sort of makes sense.
Yeah, so this would be modeled also, I forgot to mention, it will be, the legislation is modeled after the business court, which was recently
Gotcha.
enacted.
So that perfect sense at the appropriate time.
Miss Leanna Brown want to be heard as well. Do you want to be heard? Not if we're moving the bill that quickly. I understand. For the bill, Metro Chamber and Metro Chamber has made this bill a priority. I know worked. Sky here. Scott Park is also, of course, former admin to this committee, worked hard on this as well. So let's look then at House Resolution 598. What's the pleasure of the committee? Motion do pass from Senator Watson. Is there a second? Second from Senator Kennedy. All those in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. And who's going to carry, do you guys know, who's going to carry this in the?
I believe it's you.
It was me. Oh, okay. I guess I should have listened. That's what happens, Senator Kennedy. You know, all the jokes, and I get the constitutional amendment. Okay. So next we had the substitute to House Bill 1267. There were some changes from the House version, and in full candor, I'll tell you there were some questions that were raised by some folks, in particular with the Court of Appeals, that worked on some cleanup language, and I think also the business court. Do you have any comments on any of the changes that were made? I think it was just to clarify a few things, I believe, but everyone's now on board. Hey, it can only go downhill. Everything's moving. So, Chairman Martin, you have any comments on any of the changes and the substitute? I believe everybody's on board with some cleanup we did.
Yeah, we are in favor of all the changes and just are available for questions on any of those.
Anybody else want to be heard on House Bill 1267. You want to be heard, Chairman Martin?
Will Senator John need to be heard?
No.
Okay.
We're about to find out, I guess. The resolution, without you being here, moved quickly, so we'll see how it goes now. What's the pleasure of committee on House Bill 1267? Motion to pass by committee substitute, Senator Watson, a second from Senator Hodges. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. And am I carrying both of these or just one? Do we know? Okay, just both. All right.
Man has to know his limitations.
That's right. Well, I don't know. Nobody else seems to know them. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Less than an hour once we got started.